Have you ever sat quietly at the kitchen table, your hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee, wondering where things went wrong? Maybe there's a family photo nearby, and in it, everyone's smiling, but it feels like a lifetime ago. You haven't spoken to your son or daughter in months, or maybe years. You send messages, you reach out, you wait, but there's no answer. And the question that keeps you up at night is, why won't they talk to me? If this sounds even a little bit familiar, I want you to know you're not alone. Thousands of parents in their 60s, 70s, even 80s are quietly struggling with the heartbreak of estrangement from their adult children. It's one of the most painful, confusing, and lonely experiences a parent can go through. You raised them. You loved them. You tried your best. And yet, somehow, the bond feels broken. So today, let's sit down together and talk about something difficult, but important. I want to share with you 5 reasons why some adult children choose not to reconcile after estrangement. Now, this isn't about blame. It's not about pointing fingers or defending one side over the other. It's about understanding. And sometimes, understanding is the first small bridge that helps us reconnect. The truth is, estrangement doesn't come out of nowhere. It usually builds up slowly, over time. Little hurts that never healed. Misunderstandings that grew into walls. Or maybe big events that cause deep wounds. But when a child chooses to step away from their parent, it's rarely out of coldness or cruelty. More often, it comes from pain. Pain they may not know how to express. So let's talk about the first reason. One that's more common than many parents realize. They don't feel safe. Now, when we think of safety, we tend to think of physical safety. But for many adult children, emotional safety is what matters most. They want to feel like they can be themselves, speak honestly, share their feelings, express their lives, without fear of being criticized, dismissed, or judged. If your child felt they couldn't do that with you, even if that was never your intention, that may have led to the distance. Sometimes, what we grew up with feels normal. Maybe in your house, people didn't talk about their emotions. Maybe you were raised to suck it up or keep the peace. But your child grew up in a different world, a world where feelings are discussed openly, where therapy is more common, where people are encouraged to name their boundaries. So when they try to share something and feel shut down, even if it's just a shrug or a joke to lighten the mood, it can feel to them like a door has been closed. Think back to a time when your child tried to tell you something important. Did they walk away feeling seen or silenced? Sometimes it's the little things, the raised eyebrow, the change of subject, the sentence that starts with "you always" or "you never," that leave the biggest impact. You may have never meant to hurt them. You may have thought you were protecting them, guiding them, helping them grow up strong. But if they felt emotionally unsafe in your presence, like they had to wear a mask to be around you, that sense of danger may have lingered. And when someone doesn't feel safe in a relationship, walking away can feel like the only way to breathe again. Now let's take that a step further. The second reason many adult children stay distant is because they don't believe anything has changed. Imagine this. Your child builds up the courage to step away, something they've probably wrestled with for months or even years. They finally do it, hoping the distance will create space for healing. And then, everything stays the same. No acknowledgement. No change in the way conversations go. Maybe even anger or guilt tripping from the parent asking, "How could you do this to me after everything I've done for you?" That moment, the one where they hoped something would shift, becomes another wound. Your child might wonder, if I go back, will it just be more of the same? Will I be heard this time? Or will I be pulled right back into the same patterns that made me leave? You see, reconciliation isn't just about saying, let's move on. It's about doing the real, sometimes uncomfortable work of looking at what went wrong. For many parents, that might mean hearing things that are hard to accept. Times when their child felt dismissed, unloved, pressured, or criticized. It might mean saying, "I didn't realize how that made you feel. I'm sorry. I want to do better." That kind of humility can open doors. But if your child doesn't see any signs of reflection or change, they may feel like reconnecting would just be setting themselves up for more pain. They might even think, "Why should I be the one to fix this? Why should I go back if nothing is different?" Here's something many parents don't hear often enough. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. But you do have to be open to listening without defending, to asking questions without demanding answers, and to understanding that reconciliation is a two-way street. Let me share something I heard from a woman in her 60s who was estranged from her daughter. She said, "I kept asking her to come home, to call, to talk to me, but I never once asked her what she needed from me to feel safe doing that." That shift from asking for connection to asking how to earn that connection was the moment things began to change. Sometimes the biggest step forward is admitting that something needs to be different and showing your child that you're willing to grow. Let's pause here for a moment. I know some of this might be hard to hear. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed or even defensive. That's okay. That just means you care. You wouldn't still be watching if you didn't. And if there's one thing I want you to remember so far, it's this. Distance doesn't always mean your child hates you. It might just mean they're waiting to feel safe. Waiting to see if something, anything, could be different this time. So, as we continue this conversation, let's keep that in mind. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about growing. It's about finding the courage to reach across the silence. Not with pressure, not with guilt, but with curiosity, openness, and a quiet willingness to listen. So where do we go from here? Let's go a little deeper into something that's often invisible from the outside, but it changes everything. Sometimes the reason your child doesn't come back isn't because they're angry or punishing you or holding a grudge. It's because they've moved on. And I know that might sting. It might feel like a slap to the heart. But hear me out. When someone makes the hard choice to step away from a parent, not just take space, but fully walk away, they usually don't do it lightly. It hurts. There's guilt. There's grief. But in that space, something else often happens. They begin to grow. They find their own voice. They learn new ways to communicate. They develop different relationships, ones that feel easier, calmer, more accepting. They start to feel what it's like to live without the emotional weight they carried at home. And sometimes they realize they like who they're becoming. Maybe they used to freeze up in family conversations. Maybe they walked on eggshells every holiday, bracing themselves for the subtle jabs or disapproval. Maybe they always felt like they were never quite good enough no matter what they did. But then, out in the world, they meet people who simply accept them, who don't question their choices, who listen, who laugh with them. And for the first time, they feel light. They feel free. So, what happens then? Well, they start building a life that doesn't include the stress. And when someone starts to heal like that, it can be hard to go back. Because going back might feel like stepping into an old version of themselves, one they worked so hard to outgrow. It's not always about you. Sometimes it's about them. They've found peace, or something close to it. And even if they still love you, even if they still think about you, they're not sure if the relationship can fit into their new life without dragging them back into old pain. Now, I know what you might be thinking. But can't they see I've changed? That I love them? That I want things to be different? Maybe, but from their side, they may not know if it's worth the risk. That's why reconciliation isn't just about saying, come back. It's about showing, consistently, patiently, humbly, that there's a new version of the relationship waiting for them. One that respects who they've become. One that gives them space to be themselves. Not the child you remember, but the adult they are now. And that brings us to something we don't talk about enough. Forgiveness. Now, this is a big one. And honestly, it's a tricky one too. There's a lot of pressure in our culture around forgiveness. We hear it in church. We read it in books. We see it in movies. You have to forgive. You must forgive to heal. Life is short. Forgive and move on. And yes, forgiveness can be healing. It can be powerful, but it can't be forced. When someone's been deeply hurt, especially by a parent, forgiveness doesn't happen on command. It's not something they can flip on like a light switch. And when people say, but I didn't mean to hurt them, or I was doing the best I could, those things may be true, but they don't erase the pain that was caused. If your child hasn't forgiven you, it might not mean they're cruel or bitter. It might mean the wounds are still fresh. Or maybe the hurt went so deep that they don't know how to begin healing. And here's something hard but honest. Forgiveness isn't owed. It can't be earned by guilt. It can't be demanded. Sometimes a child might still be carrying the weight of things that happened years or even decades ago. Words you don't remember. Moments you thought were small. Patterns you never even noticed. And when you say, but I've changed, they might be thinking, I waited for you to change for so long. Why now? There's a phrase I once heard that stuck with me. You can't rush someone else's healing just because you're finally ready to talk. Let that sink in for a moment. Because for many adult children, it's not that they don't want to forgive. It's that they don't want to be hurt again. They're protecting the parts of themselves that were never protected before. And that kind of self-protection can take years to unlearn. So what can you do? You can respect the distance, even if it breaks your heart. You can show up without pushing. You can apologize without expecting a response. You can keep your heart open without trying to force theirs open too. And most importantly, you can take responsibility. Because when a parent says, I didn't know better, that might be true, but that doesn't mean the child wasn't hurt. And healing starts when the person who caused the hurt says, I see it now. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to fix it. That's my work to do. That kind of humility, that's powerful. That's rare. And that's what starts to rebuild trust. Not overnight, but one honest moment at a time. I want to pause here and speak directly to your heart, because I know this isn't easy. You might be listening to all of this and feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're thinking of all the things you wish you could take back. Maybe you're feeling defensive. Maybe you're crying. That's okay. That's real. That means you care deeply. And that's not a weakness. That's a gift. Estrangement can feel like a silent ache that never goes away. But understanding, true understanding, and can begin to soften the sharp edges. And I want you to know this. Just because your child hasn't come back doesn't mean they never will. People change. Hearts soften. Time does strange things. But if they do come back, someday, somehow, the question isn't whether they'll recognize you. The question is, will they see that you've done the work to meet them where they are? Because love isn't about perfect parenting. It's about showing up, messy, human, and humble, and saying, I'm still here. I'm still learning. And I want to know you again, if you'll let me. Take a deep breath. You've come this far. That means something. Let's keep going. There's something tender about reaching a certain age and realizing that relationships matter more than ever. Not the titles, not the old arguments, not the trophies on the shelf or how clean the house is. Just connection, being seen, being heard, being loved, still, even after everything. And that's what brings us to something many parents don't expect to hear, but it's a reality for some adult children. They no longer feel they need the relationship. That may be one of the hardest truths to sit with, especially for a parent, because for so long, you were the center of your child's world. You made their lunch. You taught them how to tie their shoes, how to cross the street, how to say please and thank you. You gave them life. And the idea that your child might now choose to live without you, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation or peace, can feel like a rejection of your very soul. But it's not that simple. When someone has spent years feeling unseen or misunderstood in a relationship, they often reach a point where they stop waiting for a parent to change, waiting for the apology that never came, waiting to be treated with the respect or tenderness they longed for. And in that stillness, they start to rebuild their lives without expecting it. They learn how to comfort themselves. They find friends who feel like chosen family. They discover joy in new places. And over time, the ache that once drove them to hope for reconnection becomes quieter. Not gone, but quieter. And when that happens, they may begin to see the relationship not as essential, but optional. Now, that doesn't mean they don't love you anymore. Love doesn't just disappear. But they may have learned how to love you from afar, not out of bitterness, but out of necessity. And the decision to keep that distance may not be about punishing you. It may simply be about protecting the peace they've worked hard to build. Think about your own life. Were there relationships you eventually stepped away from? A sibling who always made you feel small? A friend who only called when they needed something? A spouse who broke your heart one too many times? Stepping away doesn't always mean giving up. Sometimes it's the only way forward. So if your child has reached a place where they no longer feel the relationship is necessary, that doesn't mean there's no hope. But it does mean that rebuilding trust and connection has to be a gift, not an expectation. You can't demand a place in someone's life just because you had one in the past. But you can earn a place in their present by showing them that the relationship they walk back into will be different from the one they left behind. That begins with quiet love, gentle consistency, messages that don't demand, but invite, words that don't push, but open. It begins with saying, "You matter to me, not because I want something from you, but because I love who you are." I once heard a father say, "I stopped sending long texts asking my son why he won't speak to me. I started sending short ones telling him about my garden or how proud I was of him, even if he never reads them. That's all I have right now, and it's enough for today." That kind of love, the kind that asks nothing in return, speaks louder than any lecture or apology ever could. And if you're sitting here thinking, "But what if they never come back? What if I've lost them for good?" I want to tell you something gently but truthfully. Even if reconciliation doesn't happen in the way you hope, your efforts are never wasted. Because you're not just doing this for them. You're doing it for you. You're becoming the version of yourself that leads with openness, that listens without needing to fix, that owns past mistakes without drowning in guilt, that chooses compassion over control. And that version of you, that's a gift to everyone in your life, including you. Maybe you'll never get the long phone calls you miss. Maybe the holidays won't go back to how they were. But maybe, just maybe, you'll begin to feel a sense of peace that you showed up with honesty and love no matter the outcome. Maybe you'll inspire your child, or someone else's, to think differently, to reach out, to reconsider. Because even when you think no one's watching, someone always is. Your courage to reflect, to grow, to stay soft when it would be easier to harden, that matters. Especially in a world that sometimes teaches us to shut down and move on. So wherever you are right now, sitting in your favorite chair, walking through the quiet of the afternoon, maybe holding back tears, I want you to hear this. You are not a failure because your child is distant. You are not unlovable because you made mistakes. And you are not alone in wanting to heal, to reconnect, to make things right in whatever way you can. This journey is not about fixing the past. It's about planting something new, a seed of understanding, of empathy, of humility, and nurturing it day by day. If your child never responds, love them anyway. If they set boundaries, honor them anyway. If you don't get the reunion you dream of, be proud of the work you did anyway. And if someday the door opens, even just a crack, walk through it with grace, not guilt. Let them see not who you were, but who you've become. And even if that door never opens, know this: your willingness to look inward, to grow, to try again, that matters more than you know. Thank you for spending this time with me. I know these conversations aren't easy, but you showed up. And that says something powerful about the kind of heart you have. If this video brought you comfort or made you think, I hope you'll share your story in the comments below. You never know who you might help just by being honest. And if you'd like more conversations like this, please subscribe to our channel, Strong Elderly Life. We talk about family, healing, aging with strength and grace. Because you deserve support too. And finally, from my heart to yours, here's to second chances, quiet courage, and the kind of love that keeps growing, even through the silence. Take care of yourself. You matter. And I'll see you next time.